Let's go home. Today we come to the end of our Joshua sermon series. And I hope and pray that you enjoyed this 5-week journey as we looked at the life of Joshua, as we looked at how God used him to lead the Israelite people. And I hope you found the parallel of our life as well. And if you were not with us, or in case you forgot, in week 1 we looked at how Joshua was content on being Moses' assistant until God transitioned Joshua into a new season of life. He chose Joshua to lead the Israelite people into the promised land. And we looked at our lives and how Joshua, just like Joshua, in our lives are sometimes in times of different seasons or transitioning between one season and the next. In week 2, we looked at God as He delivered the land to Joshua and the people. We looked at the first city of Jericho in which God handed over to them. And we discovered how Joshua, being a warrior, had to obey God in an uncommon way. God needed to know from the onset, before they conquered any land, if Joshua was going to trust God and follow God's lead instead of his own. In week 3, as Joshua was getting old and tired, God told Joshua that there was still land that had to be conquered. And Joshua, being 85 years old plus, wanted to ease up a little bit, and God wanted to press forward. Sometimes we realize in our life that God still has more that He calls us to do. In week 4, we saw how God had given all the Israelites all the land. And God goes into great detail and told Joshua how to divide up the land. How the family of Judah, which means praise, got the very first section of land. And we learned that there's a big, huge difference between just having something in your life and using it and taking full advantage of something or using it to its greatest potential. It was about how we can step into our destiny of what God desires for our life. Whew, that was a whole month of sermon right there in less than 2 minutes. A month of Sundays right there. And today, that gets all of us caught up with week 5. And if you will, turn with me to the 23rd chapter of Joshua, beginning with the first verse. Joshua 23:1 reads, "After a long time had passed, and the Lord had given Israel rest from all their enemies around them, Joshua by then was very old." Okay, he was old before, now God's telling him he's very old. "And he summoned all Israel, the elders, the leaders, the judges, and officials, and he said to them, I am very old. You yourself have seen everything the Lord your God has done to all these nations for your sake. It was the Lord your God who fought for you." You see, Joshua is no longer that warrior. He's no longer that commander-in-chief. Joshua at this point is a very old man. He is the one in the family that whenever there's a family gathering, everyone gathers around old Joshua to listen to him tell of the stories of the family. And I don't know who that is in your family, or maybe it's changed over the years, but there's that matriarch or patriarch or crazy uncle or someone that everyone just sort of gravitates to during family gatherings. That person begins to tell stories, and you begin to listen of the family struggles or the family history or the family legacy. And Joshua is that guy. You see, everything is settled down. Everything's going good. And Joshua gathers the family around, and he begins to tell them everything the Israelites have gone through. He tells them of Egypt and being slaves. He tells them of Moses. He tells them of the parting of the Red Sea. He tells them about the wandering years in the desert. And he tells them about how him and Caleb were spies that Moses sent out. He tells them all about Jericho and how the walls came down. He told them about the 31 winning streak that they went on to conquer kingdoms and kingdoms. He tells them that Charleston Heston is going to play Moses and he wants Tony Curtis to play him. I was just kidding. I see if y'all pay attention. But he has them there, and he's telling them this. And he goes into great detail to remind them what all they have been through. Just like when we hear about our family legacy of struggles and good times and bad times, and what all God had done for them. But why didn't they remember? I mean, why did they been through all that? Why didn't they remember? Because I think that sometimes it's so easy to forget, especially when things are going great. It's easy to forget what all God has done for us in our lives. I mean, just like our mothers. I mean, we often forget of their sacrifice. We often forget what they gave up. We often forget how they put us first in their life. It is easy to forget all of that when times are good and times are moving forward. And what all they've done for us in our life. And if I was a lawyer, I would like to take a sidebar here for a second. And I want people to please hear me this. Mothers can be, but not necessarily have to be about birthright. And today when I speak of mothers, it is the role of a woman or any woman or women that played in your life. And technically it can be a mother, a grandmother, an aunt, a friend, someone in your church, anyone who nurtured you, who cared for you, who influenced your life, who taught you right from wrong, any woman who planted something in your soul that made you what you are today. Someone who has touched you in a way, in some way in their life, you want to emulate that in your own. And it doesn't matter who that person was, only the role that they played. Because see, I fully understand that I have been truly blessed. And I actually hit the lottery on mothers. But not everyone did. I know hundreds of people who carry scars today because of the harm done by someone who gave birth to them. And if that's you, I want to say clearly, emphatically, and humbly, I want to say, I'm sorry. I am sorry you were hurt, and I pray that you can find peace and forgiveness somewhere along your journey. Turn with me now to the 24th chapter after he gets them together, beginning with the 14th verse. After Joshua has called all these people together, Joshua says, "Now fear the Lord and serve him with all faithfulness. Throw away the gods of your ancestors, worship beyond the Euphrates River in Egypt, and serve the Lord. But if serving the Lord seems undesirable to you, then choose for yourself this day whom you will serve, whether the gods of your ancestors served beyond the Euphrates, or the gods of the Amorites in whose land you are now living. But as for me and my household, we will serve the Lord." The most important thing Joshua wanted them to know is that they have a choice of who to worship. He knew that as they were going to survive as a nation, they would have to choose to serve the Lord. But Joshua reminded the people that up until this point, they just followed God because they really didn't have a choice. I mean, God brought them out of Egypt. God brought them into the promised land. They were not exposed to other religions or other gods or other cultures. They lived a somewhat sheltered life. But now that they were settled with the people that they had conquered, now that times were great, they had a choice to make. Up until that point, you followed God because, well, your family just always followed God. You went to church as a kid. Why? Because your family went to church. And growing up, I realized as a child I had no choice. No, I didn't. I mean, my mother dragged me many times kicking and screaming to church. I had a choice. My choice was either go to church or die. And see, I remember having a conversation with my mother how I desperately wanted to be Catholic. I wanted to be Catholic because my best friend David Hiskey was Catholic, and they always ate fish on Fridays, and I love fish. They went to church on Saturday nights, and they could wear jeans, and they got to sleep in on Sunday. I mean, to me that sounded pretty awesome for church. I mean, Joshua was saying, just because you are an Israelite doesn't mean you now have to follow God. The choice is yours. And just like the Israelites, we are the results of the choices that we make. Let me repeat that. Just like the Israelites, we are the result of the choices that we make. It was critical that if Israel was going to follow God, it would be out of a choice, not out of a chance. God had brought them to a point where they had to make a choice. Because see, if you and I want to be better anything, if we want to be better parents, if we want to be better grandparents, if we want to be better spouses, better siblings, better ministers, better preachers, better servants of God, anything, if we want to be better at anything, it will be the result of the choices that we make. And some choices we make are good ones, and things work out for the best. Some choices that we make are the wrong choice. And we say the wrong thing. We react inappropriately. And hopefully when we do that, we learn from it. We gain wisdom, we gain insight and compassion, and we don't repeat it. So either good or bad, we become better as the direct result of the choices that we make in life. And the problem is that we say we want to be something, but when we examine our choices, we find that many of them run contrary to what we say we want to be. For Christians, we say we want to follow God. We say we want this intimate relationship with our Creator, but when we examine our choices or our actions, sometimes we find that they don't actually move us away from God. You see, there came a time, and I didn't even realize it, that my mother no longer had to beat me to go to church. I somehow made that choice on my own. And I did that, and however, I thought that I could keep God in my God box. I thought I could go to church, and I had my God box here, and then I had all these other little boxes. I had my God box, I had my band box, I had my party box, I had my friend box, I had my family box. And I actually thought that if I could just sober up long enough, and sometimes, sadly to say, that's what it was, sober up long enough, that I could slip into church, and I could go and I could fill up my God box. And I'd be in church and I'd fill myself up enough so me and God were cool. And then I would go out to all my other little boxes. And I'd spend so much time and energy trying to keep my boxes separated. I got my God box, my party box. And then I was truly over my head and my life was not manageable anymore. And I realized at that moment that there was only one box. Just one. Realized that what happened in my God box began to affect my party box, and vice versa. And what I do in my relationship with God affects everything else, and everything else affects my relationship with God and other people. And then I had someone tell me a priceless piece of advice, and it was this. Someone I loved and cared about set me down in this crazy, crazy world of trying to keep my boxes separated. And they said, Tommy, every action, every word, every attitude you have either makes you look more like Jesus or makes you look less like Jesus. There's no middle. There's no middle. That's when I began to change my life. I began to rearrange things. I began to see priorities different. Was it overnight? No. Did I still make bad choices? Yes. Am I still a work in progress? You bet. But I've even found that the church can sometimes lead people away from Jesus with the choices it makes. Because our boxes aren't separate. There's only one box. But we must remember we always have a choice to make. And does that choice make us look more like Jesus or less like Jesus? And we are a guilt-free, non-condemning faith family here at First Christian Church. But we must choose this day for who we will serve. Today is the day to choose. Joshua 24:15 says again, But if serving the Lord seems undesirable to you, then choose yourself this day whom you will serve, whether the gods of your ancestors served beyond the Euphrates or the gods of the Amorites in whose land you are living. But as for me and my household, we will serve the Lord. Joshua makes that statement clear to everyone. As for me and my household, we choose to serve the Lord. He says, you may choose to follow whatever God you want. But as for me and my household, we will serve the Lord. If we are the result of the choices that we make, it stands true that as a family, we are the results of the choices that we've made. But for me and my household, my mother is known affectionately to most people, even to y'all here, as Big Mama. Although she stands 4 feet tall and is about 50 pounds, she's known as Big Mama. And while she's been asked, and while her and my father were a group of young couples over 50 years ago that started a church, my mother's been asked over the years in her church repeatedly to serve as elder or deacon or some role, and my mother has never once served in a leadership role in her church. It's her choice. And while she never once suggested that I go into ministry, not once that she suggested that my siblings should do this or that. She never beat us over the head with the Bible, although maybe she should have. But if we were out of line, she would grab a fly swatter or something, whatever was laying around, only when we deserved it. But every single day, every day of my life, without any intention, my mother still starts her day with her Bible and her devotional book. Every single day. And it's been that way every single day of my life. As she says, as for me and my household, we will serve the Lord. And without much attention, it continues without us even recognizing it. My mom and her Bible. Abby at 3 years old serving bread to homeless people in Memphis, Tennessee. Not caring about how they smell, not caring about their dirty clothes, not caring about their circumstances. She did just what came natural to her. As for me and my household, Will, one Sunday, got lost in a strange church we were visiting that I was the guest preacher in. And one Sunday, and we found him. He was on the lap of an elderly lady in a wheelchair, hugging her and listening to her. As for me and my house, Abby's life would later be changed forever on a trip to Honduras. Go online and read about it in her blog. That is why our family is returning this fall. And we are hoping and praying that some of you will go with us to experience that with us. Because I want it to be clear. It's not because I'm a great father. It's not because I'm an awesome minister. It's not because of my mother and Will and Abby's mother. Said, as for me and my household, we will serve the Lord. 2 women have stood up and said, as for me and my household, we will serve the Lord. And it's not because of them. It's not because of me. Our family is not any different than anybody else. It's only by God's grace. But we started with a choice. A choice. And here's what I want all of us to understand. We are who we are today as a result of the choices our parents made and that we've made. And our children will take our lead. If we choose not to serve, not to worship, they too will choose not to come to church anymore. If we choose to stop following Jesus, guess what? So will they. And quickly, our lowest point in our life spiritually will become their highest point of their life. And I'm not comfortable with that. You see, I want my highest point spiritually to be my children's lowest point spiritually when it comes to their relationship with God. As for me and my household, let's see how this ends. Turn with me to Joshua chapter 16. Then the people answered, far be it from us to forsake the Lord to serve other gods. It was the Lord our God Himself who brought us and our parents up out of Egypt from the land of slavery and performed those great signs before our eyes. He protected us on our entire journey and among all the nations through which we traveled. And the Lord drove out before us all the nations, including the Amorites who lived in this land. We too will serve the Lord because He is our God. Joshua says, are you sure? Do you want to follow God? And the people's reply was yes. Yes, we are sure. We are sure the choice is ours. We want to serve God. And join with me in the 25th chapter and look what Joshua does. Very wise man, great leader. On that day, Joshua made a covenant for the people, and there at Shechem he reaffirmed for them the decrees and laws. And Joshua recorded these things in the book of the law of God. Then he took a large stone, and he set it up there under the oak near the holy place of the Lord. He said, "See," he said to all the people, "this stone will be a witness against us. It has heard all the words the Lord has said to us. It will be a witness against you if you are untrue to your God." Joshua says, every time you see this stone, every time you walk by it, every time you see it, every time you hear about it, every time you see this stone, it will remind you of the choice that you have made this day to follow God. I want you to remember the emotion. I want you to remember the desire. I want you to remember the commitment that you made. Every time you see this big rock, this huge rock is a reminder of the choice that you have made. It will be a reminder for future generations as God has heard the words and commitment you've made of the choice you've made here today. So today is the day. Today is the day. It is never too late. What legacy do you want to leave? Make that choice today. Choose this day. Because as for me and my house,